If you died yesterday, where would you be right now? Is there life after death? It's one of the toughest issues there is to discuss. My name is Russ Walsh. I'm author of the book Eternity, Where Will You Spend It? And I'm going to take you through this very challenging topic. When it came to putting my book together and this video, one of the things that really struck me was on this important topic is, what can we trust? There's a lot of things that have been written in recent years about people experiencing some form of afterlife, but I'm going to talk about what we really have that's truly trustworthy. About 2,000 years ago, an amazing event happened. This event was so significant that our entire world calendar system is based on this. The event is God came to earth, and God came in the form of a man named Jesus. You've probably heard of him. And during his life on earth, he performed some miracles that were just incredible. He gave sight to blind people. He walked on water. He brought people back to life. And at one point, he died and he came back to life. This is one of the most well-documented, attested to events in history. Now, some people will dispute some of the details of who he was and what happened, but almost no one disputes that he existed. And the Bible is the book that documents this. And because the Bible really is proven to be a trustworthy book, one of the most world-renowned books of all time, and it really gives us credibility about what's happened in the past and the future, and it talks about matters of life, death, and eternity. And my presentation is going to be based on what it has to say about it. So what we do know, again, is the Bible is God's book. We also know our lives, based on what it tells us, continue forever into eternity. Once we're born, it goes on forever. We also know that there are two eternal outcomes. There's one that we've heard of and we all desire, I believe, and it's called heaven. There really is such a place. And it is difficult for me to say, but there is, according to what we have documented, and it's very trustworthy, as I've talked about before, and there is a place called hell. And we also know that once your eternal destination has been sort of set, if you will, there's no crossing over from one eternal destination to another. Let's talk about heaven. What do we know about heaven? We do know that heaven is described as, and even referenced as, being paradise. We have descriptions of it that make it seem more blissful than anything we can imagine or that we could ever experience in our lifetime on earth. We also know that evil will not be present, which I think for a lot of people, when you ask the question, why is there pain and suffering? Why is there evil in the world? There won't be in heaven. We also know that all people will be in perfect physical condition, or at least we have strong reason to believe that based on what it tells us. There's a few things that are a little bit fuzzier, and so I'll say these are things that we are going to have to extrapolate a little bit, but we do know all children will be in heaven, and the people there will also likely speak one universal language. They'll remember their lives on earth, and they'll know people without even being introduced. The next topic, hell. It's definitely one of the most difficult things for me to talk about, but it's real. And from what it tells us, it's beyond anyone's worst nightmare. People will be isolated from each other. And I know sometimes people joke around about it, things like that, and say, well, at least I'll be with my friends. This is serious. It's the most serious matter there is, guys. So I really pray you'll take this seriously. Anyone past the age of accountability who's not reconciled to God will go there. And God will not be present, which is part of the problem. But more than any place, this is called the lake of fire. It's horrible. I wouldn't want anyone to experience it. So what must I as an individual do? I'm faced with, I'm an eternal being. There's nothing I can change about that. Suicide doesn't stop and give me an alternate route. There's nothing I can do once my life starts except the decisions that I make, the choices I make, and what I choose to believe. And I would say the first thing is to believe God exists. And I know there are thousands of people, millions of people, maybe billions, who've never heard what I'm saying to you today. How can they be held accountable for making such a decision? Well, God came to the world about 2,000 years ago, but we believe humanity's been around 6,000 to 10,000 years. And even after God came to the world, it took a while for the people living to know about him. What we do know is that God treats each one of us while we're alive on this earth as his child. There's no grandchildren, there's no nieces, there's no nephews. God thinks about you personally as if you're the only person here, and you matter like an only child to them. And the important thing that we have to do is really to understand that God through our life does try to reach us. As children, as we grow up, maybe you're watching this video is truly of God, that he wants you to see something so important like this, and that you can make a fair decision for yourself about what you're going to do. What else can you do? So knowing that God exists is one thing. Asking God to forgive us. If you spoke terribly about someone's child and they saw and heard you say that, the only thing you could do to make it right with that person is to apologize. And that's the same thing that God asks. You know, beyond asking God for forgiveness, we really need to ask God to give us a new heart, a new spirit, so that we can actually love him and that we can actually love our enemies. Did you know the Bible is really the only book, religious book, if you want to call it that talks about not only loving those who are easy to love, loving God, but actually to love the enemies that we have, that this world brings us. And last, you know, having a relationship with God, reading his word. When we wake up in the morning, the first thing we typically do these days is we check our phone, we check email, we see what kind of messages have come in, and we kind of base the start of our day quite often on that. If you had a message waiting for you, or an email, or even a voicemail when you woke up in the morning from your best friend, your spouse, your child, it's a good chance that's going to be kind of high on your priority list of things to respond to. But God wrote a book for us called the Bible, and my experience has said this book is alive. It's not the typical book. So often I turn to it, and whatever I'm dealing with, whether it's something difficult or sometimes even something happy, it just seems God, I open it and he's speaking to me about that subject. It's a real book, it's alive, and it's God's best method for you to really get to know him, build a relationship with him. Just if your best friend wrote a book or created a music album, you'd probably support them and you'd be a part of that. And with God, you know, again, he wrote this for you, he wrote it for me, and it's up to us to really give him a chance. So what I'd like to close with are what I'll call resources. Obviously, the Bible is one resource. I'd certainly recommend that if you don't have one, get one right away. And I recommend a book called, a version called the New International Version. It's still the same old text from 2,000 plus years ago, but it's been kind of revised in modern day English that we're used to. There's any YouTube video you can find by Billy Graham is spectacular. He's been an amazing guy, even though he died about a year and a half ago, based on the time of this filming. The things that he did and the way he addressed and answered questions about such matters is so brilliant, so precise, and I don't know if you can find anything more clear than the way he presents things. There's also a course called Who is Jesus that will really give you a lot of context as well, that I think you'll find helpful about tough matters, about life, death, and really what to do about it. Finally, I do have my book. It's Eternity, again, and if you look it up on Amazon by my name, Russ Walsh, Eternity, it will come up. In closing, I just want to make one final point. Life, you only get one chance at it. It's so important that you make a decision about eternity while you have the chance to do so. You never know when you're going to take your last breath, but I can tell you, if you give your heart to God, you're going to experience peace and joy like you never imagined in this life and the one to come. Check it out, and I hope you will. Again, thank you so much for your time. God bless.